Welcome to the silence behind thought, the hush just before the dream arrives. I'm Fish, and tonight, we don't simply drift into sleep. We descend into a deeper story, one carved not into pages, but into the very bones of memory. This is The Labyrinth, a story that wears the skin of a detective tale, but beneath it, pulses with something older, a question without words, a place without exit, a reflection without glass. So now, settle. Let your body unwind like old rope. Let your breath spiral out like smoke in a candlelit room. Let the familiar fade. Because what waits for you tonight is not found on any map, but in the echo of decisions you barely remember making. This is the final case of a man named Alaric Venn. Detective, skeptic, seeker, and perhaps a sacrificial key. But hush, the walls are already listening. The morning fog had barely lifted, curling like breath over the rooftops of the aging city. A city whose bones whispered if you listened closely enough. The kind of morning where time dragged its feet, reluctant to start again. The kind where even the pigeons moved cautiously, as if sensing the air had grown heavy in something unsaid. Detective Alaric Venn had risen early, though sleep had come late. His dreams had been fractured, a revolving carousel of faces he didn't recognize, and corridors that bent in directions geometry refused to name. He poured himself bitter coffee, opened the curtains just enough to see the bruised sky, and there, at the foot of his door, lay an envelope, unassuming, perfectly centered though, slid beneath the threshold like a gift or a curse. It hadn't been there a moment before. He stepped closer, a peculiar unease gripping him low in the belly. The paper was thick, vellum, maybe. Edges knife sharp and perfectly squared. The seal bore no wax, no return address, no indication of sender, only an odor, faint but undeniable. It smelled of scorched paper, of candle wax extinguished in haste, of the forgotten hush of cathedral libraries. That scent, he hadn't smelled it since the Verdun rituals case, a murder-suicide cult that spoke of language as infection and used mirrors as altars. He should have walked away, should have stepped over it, poured another cup of coffee, and watched the morning rot into the afternoon. But he didn't. Because some part of him, a part long starved of meaning, sensed the edges of something vast, lurking just beneath the silence of the delivery. He bent slowly, knees creaking louder than he would ever admit, and picked it up. It was heavier than expected, weighted not just with contents, but with implication. His thumb ran along the seal once, then again. Finally, he broke it. Inside, a single manila folder. No label, no department stamp, no case number. Just a folder, like a wound waiting to be opened. He sat down at the edge of his desk, flicked on the old green-shaded lamp that buzzed faintly like a nervous fly, and opened it. 8 black and white photographs spilled out in silence, the kind of silence that notices you back. They were portraits, casual, candid shots. People on park benches, in lobbies, waiting in line at what might have been a bus stop. Completely ordinary. Until you looked into their eyes. Because the eyes didn't belong. Each gaze was glassy, yet vivid. Too fixed. Too still. Too wide. As though the camera had captured not their image, but the thing behind them. Something looking through them, a presence that didn't quite understand how to be human, but had perfected the mimicry just enough to pass. Until this exact moment. Beneath each photo, a name had been scrawled in red ink, letters shaky and sharp, as if written with a trembling hand or under duress. And after every name, the same phrase was repeated. Missing, but not lost. Alaric's thumb hovered over the last photo, reluctant. The image showed a man in a trench coat, head tilted slightly, mouth halfway between a smirk and a scream. He flipped the photo. On the back, someone had written, "He remembers you." Alaric stared for a long time. His hands, without instruction, flipped to the bottom of the folder. Tucked between the photographs was a single sheet of torn paper. A note, handwritten, unfolded. No envelope. No introduction. No goodbye. Just 9 words. You solved the surface. Now try the soul. There was no mistaking it. This wasn't a case. This was an invitation. Or maybe a trap set by something that had learned how to speak his language. Alaric sat back. 37 years on the force. He'd cracked impossible strings of ritual killings, negotiated hostage standoffs where the voices on the phone weren't always human, and once, just once, talked a man down from jumping, only to discover the rooftop had no access point and the man had no reflection. He had lived his career one whisper outside the explainable. But this folder, this was different. This felt ancient, personal, alive. For a moment, he considered burning it, right then and there, erasing the line that had just been drawn between his past and whatever came next. But as his fingers hovered over the lighter in the drawer, something inside him leaned forward, not out of duty, not curiosity, but hunger. The kind of hunger only a certain kind of soul understands. The hunger to know what's behind the final door, even if opening it means you never come back. His name was Catesby Ware, a philosopher by profession, but by all accounts, a man obsessed not with truth, but with perception. He believed that truth was a myth perpetuated by consensus, and that the mind was less a lantern and more a prison of mirrors. His last known appearance was at Blackwater University, a prestigious institution nestled in a rotting part of the city, where ivy strangled stone columns like green nooses. He had been delivering a lecture titled "The Geometry of Madness, Mapping the Incurable Mind." Alaric found this listing deep in archived newspaper clippings, A blip of a headline buried between weather reports and obituary notices. Professor disappears mid-lecture. Students thought it was a performance art. That was 10 months ago. And no one had looked for him since. No missing persons report. No campus-wide alerts. Only a brief note from the dean suggesting that Ware had taken an extended sabbatical. But Vin had been in this game long enough to know the scent of a cover-up when it slithered beneath the floorboards. He visited the university grounds on a day that refused to decide between rain and fog. Statues along the perimeter seemed to lean toward him, their eyes chipped away, their mouths warped as if mid-moan. He found the philosophy department half abandoned. Lights flickered like nervous thoughts. Desk piled with untouched mail. The air was stale with the sweet rot of untouched paper and long decayed ideals. He asked the secretary about Ware. She blinked once, twice, then said she didn't recall anyone by that name. Alaric nodded, thanked her, and waited until her back was turned. Then he did what all good detectives must eventually do. He went looking for the janitor, the underpaid, the unseen, the only people who truly know a building's bones. He found an old man named Virgil wheeling a cart of cleaning supplies down a sub-level hallway, humming a war hymn out of tune. When asked about Catesby Ware, Virgil froze. I remember him, he said slowly, as if dragging the words from the cellar of his memory. Didn't blink too much, wore gloves, always smelled like copper and chalk, talked to himself. Or maybe not to himself, talked to the walls. Alaric asked where Ware had taught. Virgil pointed to a locked door at the end of a hall that didn't appear on the floor plan. That one, he whispered. I stopped cleaning it. Every time I swept the room, the dust came back, sometimes in patterns, like spider webs. Sometimes, he paused, it spelled things. Vin approached the room. The keyhole had been filled with melted wax, but the door creaked open with a gentle push. The light inside flickered and then steadied. A single blackboard stretched across the front of the room, its surface scratched not with chalk, but with symbols etched into the slate itself. Concentric spirals, triangles inside circles. Words and languages he didn't recognize, and in the center of the floor, a circle of salt. But this salt was not white. It was gray, tinged with something like soot. He stepped forward. The floor creaked, not beneath him, but around him, as though the room itself exhaled at his arrival. Alaric stood inside the circle, and then the silence broke, not by sound, but memory. A child sobbing, the sound unmistakable, soft, broken, and so familiar, but not his memory. He had no children, not in this life. The sobbing grew louder, not in decibels, but in presence. It filled the air, pushing into the cracks behind his ribs. He staggered back out of the circle. The sobbing stopped instantly. The room returned to stillness, but the damage had been done. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling. But worse, under the surface of his skin, he saw something ripple like veins. Only they moved with intention. He left the room without closing the door. He didn't need to. It would find a way to shut itself. As he exited the building, Virgil stood waiting. "Don't follow that thread too deep," the janitor said. "They say the labyrinth doesn't kill you outright. It remembers you. Waits until you forget the rules. Then it asks a question no sane man should answer." Alaric didn't respond. He was already remembering something he had never lived. A dream. A voice. You saw what wasn't there, and it saw you back. His name was Vin Morrow, a painter, a recluse, a man whose art had earned both acclaim and fear. They said his canvases didn't just disturb, they lingered. Not in thought, but in space. Viewers claimed they could feel something brush past them hours after leaving the gallery. Some insisted the paintings followed them home. Others stopped speaking entirely. His last show, The Flesh Remembers, was shut down within 2 days. Not because of violence, but because the gallery owner began screaming mid-tour, clawed out his own eyes, and whispered a single phrase over and over. "It's not paint. It's memory." Sven vanished soon after. No forwarding address, no goodbye. Just an oil-stained letter sent to a fellow artist, now deceased, which read, "I finally found the right color, but it won't stay in the tube." Alaric traced Vin to an abandoned atelier deep into the Vanth district, a neighborhood where the buildings leaned a little too closely together, and time seemed to pool in the corners like mold. The front door was sealed with 2 rusted chains, yet when Alaric touched the handle, both chains fell to the ground with a hollow clink, as if they had been waiting. The moment he stepped inside, the temperature dropped. Not cold, no. It was the chill of the emptiness. The kind of temperature you find in morgues and forgotten thoughts. The interior had been gutted. No furniture, no easels, only walls. And the walls, God, the walls. They weren't flat, they pulsed, bulging outward in the shape of human forms, as if something had pressed against them from inside, desperate to escape or to emerge. Fingers, faces, mouths gaped in silence, eternal screams. It wasn't sculpture. It wasn't paint. It was architecture corrupted. Alaric's stomach turned, but he moved forward. At the back of the room, beneath a cracked skylight where light filtered through like dying memory, stood a lone canvas, 6 feet tall, framed in barbed wire, perched on an easel made from bones, not sculpted, but real. Yellowed with age, cracked at the joints. The painting was titled Staircase to Nowhere, and it was exactly that. A staircase spiraling downward into a bottomless dark, its geometry flawed, impossible, Escherian, wrong. The longer you stared, the more your eyes refused to agree on which way it turned. And descending that staircase was a figure, pale as milk, dressed in a black suit that shimmered like oil on water. No eyes, no face, only a hole where a mouth should be, as though it had screamed itself open. It was mid-step. Alaric blinked. The figure had descended one more stair. Blink. Another. It moved when not observed, like a thought half-formed, a shadow at the edge of awareness. Alaric felt something wet on his lip. He touched it. Nosebleed. Thick. Darker than blood should be. He looked down. His feet were standing just outside a painted doorway. Only, it wasn't painted anymore. The bottom corner of the canvas had torn away, and something beneath it shifted. He dropped his coat over the painting, heart hammering like ritual drums. The atmosphere seemed to recoil, as if the room itself had been watching and was now disappointed. He turned toward the exit, but the wall had changed. The doorway was still there, but the shadows had lengthened, becoming shapes, human shapes, and taller than should be possible. One moved, just slightly. Enough. Alaric reached for his lighter, clicked it once, twice. The flame came alive, and they receded. Not from the fire, from the sound. He realized the lighter had a faint wheeze, a note, a frequency. The things in the wall heard it. He walked backward through the atelier, lighter extended like a torch in a tomb. Step by step, breath shallow, eyes never leaving the doorway. Once outside, he slammed the door behind him. But he didn't run, because running would make it follow faster. Instead, he walked calmly to his car, sat in silence, stared at his own reflection in the rearview mirror. And there, just behind his seat, in the corner of the back seat window, was a face, blank, smooth, just standing, watching. The pale man. He didn't move, but in the glass, the staircase spiraled on. Her name was Alicia Winters, 9 years old, vanished without a trace from a picnic on a Sunday, so ordinary it might have never existed at all. One moment, she was eating apple slices beneath an elm tree. The next, she was gone. No footprints, no calls for help, no torn clothing or scuffle in the grass. Only a stuffed rabbit left behind, its glass eyes staring at the sky as if waiting for an answer. Alaric reviewed the case file 4 times. There was something too neat about it, too quiet, like a melody missing all the wrong notes. The parents had no history of abuse, no debts, no criminal ties. The police assumed she had wandered into the nearby woods and gotten lost. But Alaric saw the photos. There were no woods. Only a park with exactly one entrance and no exit. The park was nestled in a forgotten part of the city, a place whose streets bore names no one could pronounce, where traffic lights blinked out of sync and pigeons never landed. The sun hung too low there. Colors always looked washed, like old dreams or faded thoughts. He visited just before dusk. The entrance gate was rusted iron, twisted into shapes that suggested letters, but not in any alphabet he recognized. He stepped inside. Gravel crunched beneath his boots. Not gravel. Teeth. Tiny, worn smooth, too many to count. He crouched, picked one up. It crumbled to dust in his hand. He said nothing, not even to himself, because here, even thoughts might echo back wrong. The park was completely silent. No laughter, no insects, not even the hiss of wind through leaves. And yet, the swings move, gently, rhythmically, back and forth, though the air was still. The merry-go-round turned on its own, slow and deliberate. And at the far end of the playground, where the grass dipped into a hollow of shade, was a sandbox. Only, there hadn't been one in the photographs. Not in the park plans, not in the aerial maps, not in the city records. Yet, here it was. And in it, cross-legged, as if she had been waiting for eons, sat a little girl, wearing the same red dress from the day she vanished. Unaged, unharmed, unblinking, she tilted her head when she saw him. Her voice was small but perfectly clear, like water over glass. "Do you believe time is a hallway or a house?" she asked. Alaric stepped closer. "I don't know anymore," he said, his voice sounding foreign to his own ears. "Good," she replied, smiling with a kind of ancient warmth. "That's the first step." He crouched beside her, careful not to break the perimeter of the box. "Do you remember where you've been?" She nodded, then shook her head. "It's hard to tell when I'm asleep," she said, "or if I ever was awake." She reached down, plunged her small hand into the sand, and pulled out something impossible. A cube, small, obsidian, perfectly smoothed, except for tiny carvings, symbols etched into each face, something shifting when he tried to read them. She held it out to him. "This belongs to you," she said. He took it. It was cold at first, then warm, like something alive. The glyphs lit briefly as his fingers wrapped around it. He looked up to ask her something, anything, but she was already standing. She stepped out of the sandbox without disturbing the sand. "Hold it tight," she said. "The labyrinth doesn't start where you expect." She walked away, and as she did, each step she took erased part of the park. The bench vanished. The trees folded in like collapsing lungs. The swings evaporated mid-swing, and then she was gone. The sandbox remained for exactly 10 seconds before it too dissolved into nothing. Alaric looked down at the cube. On one face, a new symbol had appeared. His own initials, rendered in impossible angles, written in a looping script so small he almost missed it. "Every question is a doorway. The brave ones knock." That night, Alaric Venn did not sleep. Not exactly. He lay in bed, eyes closed, breath steady, but the body was only pretending. His mind was elsewhere. The cube pulsed faintly on his nightstand, not with light, not even with vibration, but with a kind of presence, like a thought someone else was thinking on his behalf. He stared at it, watched as the glyphs reconfigured again, no longer random, but deliberate, like instructions written in a language he used to know, from a life he hadn't yet lived. The surface began to shift, revealing a map. No roads, no buildings. Instead, it was etched with corridors, bends, doorways, but not of any place in the waking world. This was a map of memory. His memory. It showed landmarks he could not name but instantly recognized. A red bicycle in an alleyway. A door in a hallway that didn't belong to his childhood home, but was always there in dreams. A tree that bled ink from its bark. Each symbol throbbed like a drumbeat beneath the skin. And in the center, the glyph for mirror. He got up, dressed, slipped the cube into his pocket, and walked out into the night, guided by something that was not quite fate, but not quite choice either. The city had changed, not visibly, but perceptibly. The air was thicker. The buildings leaned closer. The streets had rearranged themselves in subtle ways, as if the city had been grown curious about him. The address led to a structure he had never seen before, a crumbling Victorian building tucked beneath 2 apartment blocks that shouldn't have fit. It rose 6 stories, but only cast a shadow on the 5th. A brass plaque beside the door read, "No vacancies. Ever." He knocked once, twice. The door creaked open before he touched the knob. The interior was dark, not unlit, but dimmed, as though light had grown tired of trying to stay alive. Wallpaper peeled in long, curling tongues. The scent of mildew, rosewater, and burnt ozone lingered in the air. At the far end of the lobby was an elevator, its brass gate bent at the corners, as if something large and impatient had forced its way in. The panel had no numbers, only one button, labeled "Below." He pressed it. With a sound like a sigh and a groan, the elevator descended and kept descending. 10 seconds, 30, a minute. There was no sense of motion, only a growing pressure, like diving too deep underwater. When the doors opened, he stepped out into a hallway of black stone, lit by sconces that burned with blue flame. The architecture here didn't obey standard geometry. Walls sloped at impossible angles. The ceiling arched too high, fading into a darkness so complete it felt liquid. Along the corridor were doors, but none bore numbers. Each one was labeled with a word, not names, not rooms, but truths. Cowardice, abandonment, desire, control, hope, shame. They weren't titles, they were indictments. Accusations carved into the doors of his past. He passed each slowly, feeling their gravity pull at him, like they wanted to open themselves and show him what he really was. At the end of the corridor stood one final door. Its wood was darker than the others, smoother, almost reflective. It bore a single word, mirror. He reached for the handle, hand trembling not with fear, but with recognition. He'd seen this door before. Not here, not in this world, but in dreams. In the recurring nightmare that had haunted him every year on his birthday. The door that always appeared, but that he never opened. Until now. The knob was ice. He turned it. It gave way easily, as if it had always been waiting. Inside, nothing. No floor, no ceiling, only an endless drop, a void without texture. He took one breath, remembered the girl's voice. "The labyrinth doesn't start where you expect," and stepped forward. He didn't fall, he descended, slowly, like a thought lowering itself into understanding. As he dropped, memories bled into the air around him, snatches of conversations long buried, the sound of his father's voice calling his name, a woman's laughter in a room he had long since pretended never existed. The farther he fell, the clearer the memories became. Not just his, others. He saw through the eyes of strangers, victims, suspects, monsters. He saw what it felt like to run, to kill, to die, to vanish, to forget, and then impact, but soft, like landing in velvet. He opened his eyes and he was standing in a vast chamber, walls of salt, ceiling carved from a single slab of obsidian. Torches floated midair, each flame pulsing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. And in the center of the room, a spiral staircase made of bones, descending, always descending. The cube in his pocket grew warm, and on its surface, one more glyph appeared. Now we begin. The staircase spiraled downward, step after step, forged from femurs, vertebrae, and shattered jawbones. Each footfall echoed like a memory being replayed too loudly. The descent was disorienting, not because of the depth, but because the light never changed. There were no shadows, and yet he felt watched. Not by eyes, but by a kind of awareness woven into the very geometry of the place. The bones didn't feel dead. They hummed faintly under his boots, a subterranean frequency, too low to hear, but heavy enough to feel in the teeth. The cube in his pocket had grown nearly hot. It pulsed now with his heartbeat, or perhaps with its own. At the bottom of the staircase, he found a doorway. Massive, circular, carved into what looked like a monolithic slab of black granite. Yet when he touched it, the surface was soft. It gave slightly, like skin. There were no hinges, no handle, only a single phrase etched across the arch in the alphabet he did not know, but instantly understood. You are not who you think you are. The door opened inward, silently, as though his presence alone was the key. Beyond it, the heart of the labyrinth. A vast chamber, cathedral-like in scale, with no visible ceiling. The floor was a labyrinthine mosaic of polished obsidian and ivory tile, twisting in impossibly recursive spirals. As he stepped into the center, the world shifted. The air turned viscous. Sound fell away, muted like dreams underwater. And then it emerged. From the far end of the chamber, not charging, not roaring, simply walking, deliberate, calm, the Minotaur, but not the beast from myth. No horns, no hooves. This one wore a trench coat, just like Alaric's. Its face was his, but younger, sharper, undefeated. Eyes that still believed in justice, in logic, in order. This was Alaric as he could have been, had he never chosen the badge. Had he turned left instead of right that day at the academy. The figure stopped exactly 10 feet from him, tilted its head, spoke in his voice. "You came further than most." Alaric didn't respond. He was trying to control his breath. Each inhale now felt shared, as though this thing breathed through him. "You were never chasing a killer," the Minotaur said. "You were chasing yourself. What you buried, what you never wanted to remember." Its eyes began to shift. One became the face of a child, drowned and pale. The other, the muzzle of a gun. Its mouth became a spiral, opening and closing like a womb whispering secrets. Alaric stepped forward, fists clenched. "I came for answers." The Minotaur nodded, smiling slightly. "You came for forgiveness." Behind the Minotaur, a wall began to melt, not crumble, melt, as if made of a candle wax, revealing a hallway filled with mirrors. Each one showed a different version of him. A killer, a coward, a priest, a child, a man who saved her, a man who let her drown. Alaric staggered back. "No," he whispered. "Yes," the Minotaur replied. "The Labyrinth doesn't test your courage. It tests your understanding. Can you face the self that could have been?" It reached into its coat and pulled out a lantern. Inside, a candle. But the flame burned upward, the smoke spiraling down into the glass. "Take it," it said. "Walk forward. You may leave, but you will forget." Alaric took the lantern. The warmth was immediate, but it wasn't comfort. It was recognition. Each flicker of the flame pulled at a memory, softly erasing. He saw faces fade, names drift out of reach, regrets losing their teeth. What happens if I stay?" Alaric asked. The Minotaur smiled wider now, not cruelly, almost lovingly. "Then you become the next guide and wait for the version of you that's ready." The mirrors pulsed with light. Each one showed him stepping through a door. One by one, his choices played out. In one, he retired peacefully. In another, he put a gun in his mouth. In another, he disappeared, just like the others. I don't want to forget," Alaric said. "But you already have," the Minotaur whispered. And then, darkness. Not the absence of light, but the moment before the soul blinks. 3 days later, Detective Alaric Venn retired. The city hadn't changed, but somehow everything was quieter, as if the skyline had exhaled. The precinct was decorated with half-deflated balloons. A banner read, "Congratulations, Venn. in sloppy marker, with the word congratulations spelled wrong and fixed with tape. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber. The cake was store-bought and sweating through its icing. They laughed. They clapped. Someone made a joke about him finally catching up on sleep. Someone else toasted to a life without corpses. He smiled. He nodded in all the right places. But inside, he was silent. Utterly, completely silent. Not because there was nothing to say, but because something had been taken. Or more precisely, something had been traded. And he couldn't remember for what. Captain Delaney gave a half-hearted speech, mentioned the Ware incident, though no one could recall what exactly that had been. Someone offered Alaric a plaque with his name engraved slightly off-center. He ran his fingers over the letter. They felt unfamiliar. He looked up, and for the briefest moment, just a flicker, he saw a pale man standing behind the cake table. Suit still wet with shadows, eyes like oil on glass. He blinked. Gone. They handed him a small box wrapped in navy paper, a gift. Inside, a compass. Old, real brass. The kind used by explorers long before GPS. Only it didn't point north. The needle spun slowly in a perfect circle, never stopping. They all laughed. He laughed too. But his hands trembled slightly as he slipped it into his pocket. 2 weeks later, he was gone. No disappearance, no drama, just gone. He moved to a cabin in the Pyrenees. No forwarding address, no contact. A small wooden house surrounded by silence and snow. Goats grazed the ridge nearby, bells chiming faintly as they moved through the fog. He spent his mornings chopping wood, his afternoons reading books he already read, his nights watching the fireplace until it blurred into dream. It was peace. Almost. Because sometimes, just sometimes, he'd wake at 3:33 a.m., gasping for air, with the faint scent of salt and oil in the room. The cube sat on a shelf in the corner. He had no memory of packing it. Hadn't touched it since that night. Yet here it was, perfectly centered, dustless. He never dared pick it up. But during certain phases of the moon, it hummed. Faint, low, like a tuning fork struck against the edge of thought. And on those nights, the shadows in the cabin stretched a little longer. The goats refused to graze near the window. And the staircase, the one that led nowhere, seemed one step deeper. He would sit by the fire, wrapped in layers of silence, and try to remember what had changed, what he had lost. But the memories, they folded when he reached for them, like pages glued shut. Sometimes he dreamed of a girl in a red dress, sometimes of a painting that moved, sometimes of the Minotaur whispering in his own voice, "You are here now. All paths led here." One morning, he opened a drawer in the kitchen. Inside was the compass, still spinning, still smiling. And beneath it, a slip of paper. Not handwritten, typed, crisp, clean. It read, "Retirement case number 0. Status, closed. Subject, forgotten. Witness, self." They say he still lives up there. They say he talks to no one. That sometimes, if the wind is just right, you can hear the clicking of typewriter keys echoing down the mountain, even though he never owned one. And if you ask the locals, they'll tell you the truth. That house on the ridge? It was never there before. But now, it always has been. And now, as your breath slows, as the quiet folds itself around you like an old familiar coat, I ask you, not with words, but with the part of you that still dreams even while awake. Do you remember? Do you remember where the labyrinth began? Not in a case file, not in a folder, not even in a missing girl's photograph or a painting that moved. It began with a question, a whisper behind the curtain of your thoughts, a voice that sounded like your own but came from somewhere deeper. What if you're not who you think you are? The labyrinth isn't built from bricks. It isn't a place you visit. It has no entrance, no exit, no Minotaur in the traditional sense. No. The labyrinth is much more dangerous than that. It is made of decisions, of memories you rewrote to survive, of truths too heavy to carry, so you left them behind like teeth under the pillow. And every time you pretend not to feel something, not to remember someone, a new corridor is carved. Every choice you didn't make, every word you didn't say, every version of yourself you abandoned along the way, they're all waiting there, just beyond the reach of waking. And sometimes they knock. Sometimes you answer. Sometimes you mistake them for dreams, but they are echoes, not fading, walking. So now, as your eyes begin to flutter, half open, half closed, let the room around you drift away. Let it melt into something soft, something strange. Maybe you're already in the hallway. Maybe the walls are just out of focus. Maybe there's a door in your mind that's always been slightly ajar. And maybe, just maybe, tonight's the night you walk through it. If you do, don't be afraid. Don't run. Because the thing waiting on the other side, it isn't a monster. It isn't a killer. It's you. Just another version. One that never forgot. One that still remembers how to open the last door. And it has something to say. Something you've waited your whole life to hear. So listen closely now. Because the labyrinth doesn't speak twice.